Thinking about a traditional resume, which of these sections would show up? Well, first of all, you definitely would want your name. Your name is super important and must be on your resume. A personal logo probably wouldn't appear on a traditional resume because most people don't have a personal logo. However, if you were making a creative resume, like for instance, for a graphic design position or maybe an animation position, you would probably have a personal logo. Work experience is definitely included. And what I want to point out is work experience does not have to be paid work experience, or it doesn't have to be actually taxable work experience. What's important to note is when you fill out an application, most of the time you want to put jobs where you had a pay stub and taxes. However, with work experience on your resume, you can put things like volunteer work or things where you got paid under the table, like babysitting or lawn mowing or other things you may be doing as a teenager. This is a great opportunity for you to also showcase some skills. A personal profile is usually not included on a traditional resume. It's more like an overarching explanation on your life and where your goals are and what you're trying to do. We don't usually see that on a traditional resume, but we do sometimes see a summary or objective. Summary or objectives are kind of interesting. You can or cannot have them. People are starting to lean towards not having them, but they're essentially like a goal statement of what you're trying to achieve. And we're going to talk about how to craft a summary or objective that is appealing to both you and the employer. Your phone number should definitely be included. And you may be thinking, well, the application is going to ask me for my phone number, so why would I need to put it on my resume? Well, what if you're only turning in a resume and there's no application? Or what if your resume gets separated from your application? You want them to be able to find you and get a hold of you. Volunteer experience is a lot like work experience and showcases skills and your ability to be part of your community. An address is included. Yes, people still use snail mail. Put your address. A communication section is usually not included on a traditional resume. The reason I put communication and leadership as options on here for you to think about is because Word templates for resumes, which are just preset documents that are ready to go for you to fill in content, some of them have a communication section and a leadership section. And a lot of people get hung up on those because they're like, okay, what do I highlight about communication and leadership if I don't really have a lot of things to say? The communication and leadership sections are great if you actually want to highlight your work experience or volunteer experience or awards and achievements in communication and leadership. If you don't have those, you don't need to have those sections and you can remove them. They're also to show you that you can actually talk about specific skill areas on a non-traditional resume and highlight skills that are needed for the job. So for instance, if the job description said that you need to have leadership qualities, you could have a leadership section where you actually highlight reasons that you would have leadership qualities or what you've done in the past. But again, if that is not something that you have inside of your job description or needed for the job, you don't need that section. Education is included on most resumes, actually like all of them. And usually what I want to point out is that you don't put your elementary school, you don't put your middle school. Even if you're a freshman, don't put your middle school. You can put your high school even if you're currently going. And if you've gone to multiple high schools, you can put multiple high schools if needed. When you move on to get a post-secondary education, if you do, like going to a trade school, getting a certification, getting a 4-year degree, 2-year degree, any of those options, which are all great, you can go ahead and list that education as well, along with your high school. Your high school drops off of your resume once you've either gotten a master's degree or once you've gone about 15 to 20 years outside of high school. It also wants to be, when you're talking about education, if you're going to try and get a job in your hometown, like Cheney or the Airway Heights or West Plains, you might want to keep Cheney High School on your resume, even if you're 20, 30, 40 years out, just because it shows that you are committed to the area and community. Skills is a great section for you to be able to highlight these skill areas that you have and is totally included on a traditional resume. Additional training is not usually included on a traditional resume, but can be if you need it. Traditional training is a great way to showcase like internships or externships or even things like, I think when to become a teacher, I do student teaching, which is an additional training on top of my education. An email address needs to be included and it needs to be appropriate. Don't do hotstuff99@gmail.com. Your birthday isn't usually included on a resume at all, and actually I would suggest you do not ever put your birthday on there, and we'll talk about why in the future. A fax number is not usually included. Those are pretty outdated unless you're working for the state or a medical facility. And social security number should never be included on your resume.